All right. So we're back here on Film Noobs. Welcome back. First of all, let's give a big thanks to our sponsors, which is the what is it? Southern Hospice Internal Treatment Center. The ladies from over there, they got their Redux checks in. So, we got some tacos for this month. Today, we do have Russell Brown. He is the director of the Bluetooth version. I'm looking at my notes, sorry. Bluetooth version. Virgin, which is a feature film that won on our film festival, which is River City Underground Film Festival here in San Antonio. It won for best feature, best male director, and yeah, well, overall feature, best drama, and male director. Russell, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How's life treating you over there in California? California, right?
Yeah, I mean, life's treating me fine, but I mean, I think everybody's worried about what's going to happen, and how we're going to return to some sort of like public normalcy, especially in the work that we all do with festivals and movie making and all of that.
Well, I know you are right now because I was reading some of your backstory or your info. You are on post editing,
Yes.
so it shouldn't affect you too much. But at the same time, it still affects you on a daily, being that we're all creative, and so we're doing other projects, right?
Yeah, I mean, the movie that I just finished, actually, we just finished final post work about a week before everything was shut down in Los Angeles or closed. And, the real question now is, when is the movie going to be able to start having its festival rollout? Because nobody knows which festivals are actually happening. So, that's kind of the state that all of us involved with this film are trying to kind of navigate.
Yeah, because I know here, as a matter of fact, in March they just like maybe 2 weeks before it happened, South by Southwest, which is one of the biggest in the nation, aside from cons and everybody else. You know what I mean? But South by Southwest, which is big for us, they announced that it was going to be closed down to further notice. But a lot of the screenings are still being held via Amazon Prime, I think. They're having a special kind of thing, whatnot, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But anyway, we'll see. I think the filmmakers who, were at South by Southwest, that's a tough position to be put in. It's sort of like, you've worked so hard for years on a film, and you've gotten it into a prestigious festival, and you have to make this, part of why we all do this is to be with an audience and to see how they're reacting to work in the moment. And it would have been, if I was one of them, I think it would have been really hard to have made that decision, whether or not to allow a movie to have its world premiere in a digital environment.
Yeah, it is. It is rough because it's not the same. That's not really what you want for your film.
Yeah, I agree.
Now let's talk a little bit about Bluetooth version.
Okay.
That's the one that won in our film festival last year for best film overall. It was your second feature film, right?
Yes.
And you had a budget of over 200,000, I believe.
No, the budget for that movie was about 55,000.
55,000. Okay. And you had star. Your two stars were all of Days of Our Lives, CSI, and Bryce Johnson of Pretty Little Liars, NCIS, and Supernatural. Is that correct?
I guess so. I didn't know he was on Supernatural. I know at the time, Bryce's biggest credit was this show called Popular. But yeah.
Yeah, he has one episode on Supernatural. And so I had to go back. I was like, wait, what? So I went back and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, he was that bad guy.
He's that guy. There's always one guy that you always remember his face.
Yeah.
Everything he does, and you're like, man, that guy. You know that guy that was on that show? Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, I know.
So let's talk about that. Give me a rundown of the film.
Well, the film is about two writers who are friends, and one is kind of more successful than the other. He's a magazine editor, and the less successful guy is a screenwriter, and he's had one kind of one moment of success in his career where he wrote a television show a couple years before the movie began that had kind of one season. And that character is played by Austin Peck. And so he has written his new screenplay, which he thinks is a wonderful movie, and he's gotten lots of feedback from his friends. And
his screenwriter friends.
Yes, his screenwriter friends. Yeah. And he gives it to his good friend David to read. And David, played by Bryce Johnson, has to tell him that he thinks it's terrible and he didn't understand it. And that causes a real problem in their friendship, a real breakdown in their friendship. But from there, both of the characters go on these kind of journeys that get into sort of the philosophy of writing, the motivations for writing, kind of what artists go through in terms of kind of success and failure and validation and praise and criticism, and really gets into these questions about how creative people work and, kind of the pain that they go through a lot of the times in their own minds when they're making films and writing.
What gave you this idea, though?
I think it really started as kind of a funny thing because this was a situation that I'd been through on both sides, in Los Angeles particularly. And I went to film school and, you're often put in the position of giving feedback to your friends, and you're often put in the position of receiving feedback from friends. And, as I went through that process over and over again for many years, I just started thinking about how much layers are in that situation. And it brings up all kinds of stuff for people and all kinds of, really interesting self-reflection, when you receive criticism from a friend and really what the meaning of friendship is and what are the responsibilities of a friend. And it was just fertile territory that I had never really seen explored in a movie.
Yeah, that's one thing that when we were watching the film, we had to kind of like sit back. We're like, dude, it reflects a lot of us because it is, like you were saying, in film school, because I went to the film school also, and it was like, how do you sit there and tell somebody's like, oh, well, dude, it kind of bites. It's like, it's been done before. This reminds me so much of XYZ movie. You just change the names. Like, no, it's never been that. I'm like, dude, look, let's Amazon this thing. And yeah, sure enough. Things like that. One of my favorite parts is when they're smoking on the rooftop. And he's like, well, you got one of two options. You could either tell him the truth or you could lie to him. And then they're going back and forth in that conversation alone. You've had it plenty of times.
Yes.
Plenty of times with all your friends. And you're like, man, dude, am I going to be that asshole? Or am I going to be the best bud that he needs? But,
right.
Yeah. But we loved, we really enjoyed the movie. And then I think it was the conversations, like you said, the process of figuring out who you are and how to interact with each other at the end. It really was well done. Because a lot of times, especially in drama, conversations tend to get stale. And they're like, I want to say there's conversations in film and then there's conversations in real life. And a lot of times the film doesn't reflect real life, but in yours, it almost like paralleled it so well without being too realistic, because when you realistic conversation, it goes nowhere. But in film, you have to get to a point really quick.
Yeah, I've sort of gotten into this. My new film that I just wrote, in a way, is even more of a challenge from a writing perspective than this current one, because the new film is two characters, but it's only them the whole time. Like in the Bluetooth Virgin, you're introduced to new people, so new dynamics can come in and new conflict can be, brought into the scenes. Because even though it feels like regular conversation, I'm glad you felt that way about it. One of the things that's sort of operative in those scenes is that throughout the scene, there's always conflict. There's always values. There's always disagreements within the conversation. So it really, I think the reason, if you think those scenes work, these long 12-minute two-person scenes, it's really because they're not just chatting, they're actually arguing or they're working something out. And so there's sort of a tension that gets brought into it.
Yeah, because a lot of time, especially now, you see a lot of the films, they're like 60-second to 30-second cuts. And it's like, dude, where's my attention going? What am I supposed to be looking at? But here, you slowed down that conversation and actually got into the dynamics of the two people. You know what I mean? And like you were saying, there is conflict, but it doesn't seem like you're dragging this conversation on forever.
Right.
Because a lot of times it does seem that way, especially in drama, and that's a hard thing to do. Is like, where do I cut him off? You know what I mean?
No. You got to find that moment when has the audience have I gone too far in this scenario of just having two people talk? And you can really feel it in a room, you know, where it's like, oh, this is still a little too long.
Yeah. Now, your process for writing, what would you say? You know, the what is it? How do you go about, you know, sitting there and actually thinking of all these conversations, these people, the world around them, and whatnot?
Well, you know, my process of writing it's interesting because it's a little hard to describe because really there isn't one. I mean, what it is that I just sit down and I just start writing. Like I'll just write scenes, I'll write dialogue, I'll just write and write and write and write and write, and I'll have tons of stuff, you know, like and I can write really fast. If I take 3 hours, I'll have 25 pages of dialogue. I mean, none of it may be useful, but there's just material being generated and generated and generated. And I usually have this kind of vague notion of like who the characters are, but I haven't done, you know, I know a lot of writers kind of will do, you know, like a whole 3-page outline of the characters' histories and, you know, a detailed plot thing, you know, and I don't do that. I just kind of go into my imagination and see what comes out. Mm-hmm. So, you know, and I do that for a while. And then it becomes a process of just forming the clay, you know, and taking stuff out and editing it and moving things around. And so it's not really a process so much as it is kind of like a just an exploration of the dialogue and the characters and like getting their voices to sound right and being able to hear their voices in my head and follow who they are. And so it, you know, that's sort of the beginning of it. And then it becomes like a real editorial process where you're just editing and editing and editing and rewriting and editing. And, you know, so to me, it's more an editorial. There's kind of the imaginative and then there's the editorial versus a timeline. But I think every project is different, you know, like maybe I just haven't written the thing yet that requires a little bit more of a structured process.
Okay. Now I have a question because you were saying you find their voice.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of times I've seen it and I've heard it. I even experienced it myself to where I know the character intimately.
Yeah.
Here comes, you know, Austin. Here comes Bryce.
Right.
And they completely take him out. And how do you deal with that?
Well, it's funny because so I just made a film. I don't remember this happening so much on Bluetooth Virgin. I do. But I just finished a movie called Lauren and Rose, and I think it turned out really well. I'm super proud of the movie. And the lead actress is Jacqueline Bisset. And, you know, when I'm working with actors, I'm always very open to sort of changing things and listening to what they have to say. But there were a couple things that she wanted. And I just said, your character wouldn't say that. Your character would not say that. And here's why. Here's why your character would not say that. And, you know, she fought me on it. And there's actually one example where I said, well, you can say it, but I'm going to cut it out. And she's like, okay, but I'm still going to say it. I was like, okay, we could do that if you want. But I'm telling you now, it's not staying in because your character would not say that. And here's why. But I think if you're, when you're working with actors, if directors have to be able to talk about why the characters are saying what they're saying, they have to be able to do that. So I think you're never going to have an argument with an actor, or you're never going to have bad blood with an actor if you can have an opinion about why a character would say something from a writing point of view. They will always respect that. If you can really talk about it intelligently and but every now and then an actor will call you on something about why their character wouldn't say that. And that's their job. Their job is to understand this character and why they would and wouldn't do or say certain things. And sometimes they're right. And you as a director or a writer also have to be egoless and wise enough to trust them and to get yourself out of the way and say, okay, they're right here. Like, I didn't see it that way when I was writing it, but they're right, and I'm going to go with their instinct.
Okay. Now, again, like Bluetooth version, you had two very seasoned actors.
Yeah.
And you were saying the movie you worked on right now, you have other seasoned actors. Yeah. Most of us, when we start off with friends, family, the local actor that's up and coming. Mm-hmm. I don't want to call them, noobs or anything, because they're up and coming. How do you transition, you as a director, to working on them, to getting them on your project? It's a big step there.
Well, those are kind of different. So there's a couple of parts of the question. The first question is how do you get them?
Yeah.
And then there's the how do you work with them? Do you want me to talk about both?
Yeah, please.
Well, getting them there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, first of all, you have to just be a little bit realistic about who you can actually get. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of younger filmmakers, and I'm not trying to be discouraging to people, but you're not going to get the if there's a 20-something-year-old male part in the movie, you're not going to get the A-list 20-something. They have every other option to do in their life. You're not going to get Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
If you don't have the track record yet, or it's just not, or you don't have the money or that. So I think the first thing is to kind of start with a realistic idea. I mean, the second thing to recognize is that actors are always looking for great parts, always. And they're always, pretty much without fail, will take pay cuts, will fight their scheduling for the other things in their lives to play a great part.
Yeah.
Actors are motivated by great parts. They are desperate for great parts. So I know that sounds contradictory to what I just said, but Timothée Chalamet is being offered a lot of great parts. There's a lot, but the next level down may not be being offered as many great parts. So those people are eager for great parts. So the next question is, how do you get your project to them? And, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can work with a producer. You can work with a casting director. You can, build your network a little bit to get into the agency world and to have your project considered. I think it's good to sort of build a team, so it doesn't just look like, hey, I'm a filmmaker with a script. Will you join on? You want to kind of have a team around you and a presentation, and here's the budget. Here's where we want to shoot. Here's what I have to pay you. Here's who we're thinking of for the other parts. Here's a lookbook for what I want the film to look like. I think if you're a newer filmmaker trying to attract bigger talent, the more professional and together you can appear and be, the better chance you'll have on landing somebody. But I think that the sort of gates to those people are exaggerated. Those people actors and their reps want great parts. They're looking for the part that's going to turn them into the Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah. No, okay. Because I had like several questions when and I don't want to interrupt you, whatnot. You were talking about a great team, and again, going back to the two. Oh, stupid cat. That's the only thing about working from work.
Cats. There's only amazing cats.
There's stupid people who own great cats. I'm one of those. Sorry about that. I have like 7 cats and they're all over me here.
Oh my god, my cats are out there and they're usually all over me too, so it's fine.
Okay. So if you see a tail or something, you already know why. Talking about having a great team on the Bluetooth version, your cinematographer Marco Fargoli.
Marco Fagnole, yes.
Okay, I didn't know how to correctly pronounce his last name. I was like Fargoli. Anyways, Marco, he did extremely well. Inside the cafe, beautiful. It looked like it was daytime. It wasn't overdone. You could tell one source lighting, all that good stuff. Again, we're talking about 3-point lighting, all the technical aspects of that. How much did you have to work with him, or was he the one like, no, here's my creative process. I'm going to make it look better for you.
Right. I mean, the way I work with my keys, when I say keys, I mean department heads, camera department head, I can't talk to them in their particular language. Like I generally can't say, we need a blah, blah, blah light here and a twinkly toes light here. Like I don't know what those are. I don't know what the correct thing is. My job is to explain the scene to them. Like, here's what's happening in the scene. Here's what the scene is about. Here's how the scene should feel. Here's some visual references that I've collected from other films or from photographs or from paintings that suggest the tone or the color palette of this scene. You got to give them some meat to fill up their creative juices. And you can do this with all your department heads. Like I can't tell you, this actor should wear this kind of suit and this kind of tie and this color shirt. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know stitching and I don't know any of that. Here's who this character is. This character, wants to create an appearance of being smarter than he is. He wants to create an appearance of being more sophisticated than he is. He's intimidated by this other character, so he's going to dress up in this scene. But something about him should suggest that he doesn't have a lot of money. You know what I mean? Like, talk about the character and then let them do the work. So, I don't remember exactly what Marco and I talked about. I mean, I will talk about sections of dialogue and say, okay, for this section, I want to do these swish pans because this is where the dialogue is getting really, there's a real conflict going on here. So let's do swish pans for here. Then I want to, get a real sense of loneliness in this restaurant. So we're going to pull back and just see how isolated they are and sort of how quiet and uncomfortable and eerie the whole scene is. Camera angle and position is something I can get into more than kind of how it's lit and all of that. But I think your main job is to really understand the scene and how the visual storytelling is going to contribute to the scene.
Now you edit, right?
Yeah.
So as an editor, writer, director, which most of us kind of tend to be anyways, your job, are you actually like doing it as you're shooting? You know what I mean? Like some of us is like, no, I don't need to shoot extra because I'm already editing in my head as we're shooting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I don't really edit in my head so much as I
prevision.
Yeah, I mean, I think shot lists are great. I think kind of, trying to get a sort of a vague sense of how the scene might be cut together. But I think you always have to leave yourself options, because things may not work out the way you thought when you're in the cutting room. So you don't want to be so sure of your editorial choices that you haven't given yourself other options. But yeah, there's always a certain amount of kind of editing going on because you're always making sure that things are going to match and cut together.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really important for filmmakers, to sit in the editing room for a long time. If you're making your first film, even if you're not editing it directly, sit there all day and just watch the cut come together, because all of those choices and fighting with footage and wrestling a scene to the ground, it's important to be there for that and to understand the complexity of getting a scene to play well, I think.
Cool. Now, you said you went to film school, right?
Yeah.
You think that helped you with the whole process? Is it like one of those, like, there's always that question, to film school or not to film school?
Right.
What's your opinion on that one?
I think that, so I went to film school to be a critic. Like, I wanted to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't really making a lot of films in film school. I think it's sort of like a case-by-case thing. I don't think it's necessarily... A lot of the people who went to film school to do certain crafts didn't end up doing the crafts they thought they were going to do, and didn't end up following the career they thought they were going to end up. But you could say that for all study that people do in college. So I don't know. I think if you're at the point in your life where you're just love films and love movie making, and you have to be involved in it in a deep way, and that's your passion, then I would go to film school. But I think if you think that film school is going to get you somewhere, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you on the same idea that I don't think film school is to make you successful, because it's not. No. I think making film is what's going to make you a filmmaker, but film school is great for exploring.
Yeah. If that's where you want to be when you're 18 or 20 or 28 or whenever you're going to film school, if that's what you have to do, then I think you have to honor that.
Yeah. Now, when did you, and this is something, again, coming from a lower tier indie guy, when did you know you kind of crossed over into that like, oh, now I'm able to pull these guys, these Hollywood guys versus your up and comers? When did you know you're like, okay, cool, now I have to sit down and really make that budget, make the budget work? I'm no longer pitching to my friends. Now I'm pitching to agencies. Now I have a distributor. When did that happen for you, or was there a certain place?
I mean, I think even with my first film, I was always in the kind of like Hollywood arena, in that, we were submitting the script to, agencies, mm-hmm. getting, passes, and, negotiating, talent deal. Nobody in my first film who acted in my first film was a friend.
Yeah.
But they've all become my friends, but they weren't people I knew. So, I don't think I ever had like a sense that I sort of crossed over. Yeah, I don't think that ever really happened. I feel like I've always been operating in the same kind of sphere for all of my films, which is really this kind of low budget indie thing. Mm-hmm. And I know that there's a lower tier, like what you're talking about, but I don't think I came out of that. I think I was always kind of operating with a little bit more money within a network of kind of Indiewood.
Okay. Now, when you talk about money, a lot of us use, again, Indiegogo, various other ways of getting money, credit cards, loans, favors. Again, yours being a little bit higher budget-wise, mm-hmm. How do you go about getting there?
Well, it's sort of the same thing, but you sort of start talking to people who invest a little bit more regularly in movies. I mean, like it's never been such high budgets. I've every movie I've ever made has been SAG ultra low budget, so it's been on the $250,000 and less SAG contract.
Yeah.
So, when you're trying, big companies don't want to spend $50,000 or invest $50,000 in a movie or even $100,000 in a movie. They're looking for bigger fish, bigger investments, bigger fish to fry films. So I'm still working in the kind of same, how do I scramble together, $250,000 to make this movie? I mean, generally it is, every movie has its own different kind of set of people that get involved. But, generally it's people that I know, people that have invested previously, people that do small film investments, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah, because it when I say different tiers, again, I'm talking about the like myself, first film coming in, just kind of testing the waters, kind of trying to figure out where I'm at. Nobody knows who the heck I am. Then, like you said, nobody's going to invest on somebody who doesn't have that track record. Especially when you have no distribution, you haven't had that distribution deal already. Nobody's going to be like, well, you know what? Let me give you here $10,000, here $20,000. You know what I mean?
I sort of disagree a little bit because here's what I think.
Okay.
If you run a film festival and there's film festivals all over the country,
yeah,
and they're going on in every city in the country. I mean, really, there's so many film festivals, and those are often run by and attended by people who are film fans and would love to be involved in independent movies. And this is one of the great goods, I think, of film festivals, is that you can connect with audience who, the rich dentist in Florida who wants to be in the movie business but can't give up his dentistry practice is a real thing. Like if you go to these festivals and you go to the bagel brunch, and it's all the people who have donated money to make the festival happen, those are people who would love to be an executive producer on a small indie so that they can be involved in the process. Like people would love to be involved in the process, for an amount of money that often to them is not that much money. $20,000 sounds like a lot of money to us filmmakers, because it's hard to scrabble together that amount of money. But if you've run, I have so many examples of this because I've gotten approached so many times over the years by people and gotten business cards and, of people who want to invest in films. It's really not, it's not that crazy.
I'm looking at you like, what's the secret? Let me write down the secret. But okay, let's talk about this because it seems like it's a secret.
Yeah.
A lot of young up and comers, and I know a lot of them, and I think that's why we started Film Noobs and we started doing Rough with our festival because it was a different tier kind of guy.
Yeah.
And we wanted to reach little guys, because a lot of them, they were like, dude, we're so tired of the festivals. And I'm like, yeah, but there's pros to the big festivals. And a lot of them are like, yeah, but we're lower budget. We're like zero budget guys and nobody ever looks at us and we can't afford this. I'm okay, well, let's work with you. And even in Film Noobs, I'm like, okay, you're a director, but I get it. You don't have that audience. So let's work with each other to grow your audience so you can be able to pull these kind of guys. One thing that you said, you go to the brunch, you have a business card, and pass out the business card. What's your, like when you go to a festival, what's your preparation and how do you mentally prepare yourself? Like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm gonna pass out these cards. I'm gonna sell myself as the next big thing. Talk to me about that.
Well, I mean, for me, I go up and I show up to my screening, and I look kind of presentable. I mean, honestly, I think this kind of thing makes a difference. If I'm about to hand you, if I want somebody to hand me $30,000 or $25,000, I see people stand up at the screen. I've been doing this too long. I see people stand up at these screenings at festivals. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you're a director. Your job as a director is for people to follow you. Like, I wouldn't follow this person to the, like, are you kidding me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're showing, you got to show up for your audience and show up for your movie and kind of have some, I'm not saying everybody should wear a collared shirt and a sweater, but you know what I mean? Like, get yourself together a little bit. And then, in your own style, even, Jim Jarmusch wears a hat, but, and I think show up, be enthusiastic about your work. People always will come up to you afterwards if they like it. Engage in that conversation, and go to those networking events, hang out there for an hour or two. I think it's natural, like natural connections, natural friends, will emerge. I don't think it has to be so directed. I think if you just put yourself in the place and kind of go in with an open attitude and kind of a seriousness about your work and thinking of it as what your life is, people will respond to it and they'll be attracted to you. I don't think there's any more to it than your own kind of what you're putting out.
Okay. Because this brings me back to another question.
I don't know. Is that?
And I've asked this to many people. Do you call yourself a director?
Yeah. Well, I call myself a filmmaker.
Filmmaker.
Yeah.
And this is one of the questions I asked one of my buddies because he had like 40 feature films. He's been on Blockbuster and everything, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I listened to what's his name? Oh man, Robert Rodriguez. He's like, dude, once you pick up a camera, you make a 2-3 second thing. You're a filmmaker. You are a director. I'm like, well, I think there's more to it. I wouldn't call myself anything that I didn't know the craft.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think being a director, being a filmmaker, there's a craft behind it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. Again, when you present yourself as a filmmaker or as a director, or how do you kind of feel to be able to call yourself that?
Well, I mean, I sort of agree with Robert Rodriguez in a way. This idea of you self-identify as a director, you have to or a filmmaker, like it's no one is going to anoint you with that, or no one's going to let you into the club.
Mm-hmm.
But it's tricky now because, like, okay, if I go outside and shoot some footage on my iPhone of a flower and then post that on Instagram, am I a filmmaker or a director?
Yeah.
I don't think that really cuts it. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I do know that there's this. I guess the one thing that I would say is that you can't ever let someone else or some other entity or body, film festivals, critics, distribute whatever. You don't need them to tell you you're a filmmaker or a director. You really only need to decide for yourself and then just say it.
It is. I mean, it is. It's funny because again, everybody has a different reaction to that question, and it is. It's. I mean, it is self-anointing, I guess. How you explain it, and then, again, it goes back to that the craft behind calling yourself that, because I was a photographer for I studied photography, and I went and I did it for several years before I even called myself a photographer. But then I look on Craigslist and I look on Facebook and I'm like, hey, photographer for $50. I'll do your wedding. And then you look at the photos and I'm like,
oops, sorry.
no, you're good.
Sorry. Just turn this off here.
You're good. But then again, you look at their work and you're like, you don't quantify yourself as a photographer. And that's where the question comes in. It's like, well, how do you quantify yourself as a director, filmmaker? And like you said, I mean, there's nothing really quantifying, or there's no ABC. Oh, here you go. Here's your diploma as a quantified director, whoever there is out there. You know what I mean? There, film festivals could say you're award-winning director, but then it's like, it's a 50-tier festival that only nobody sees. I mean, as opposed to now you're an award-winning director at South by Southwest.
Well, this gets into sort of like I always have like this. I try and think of things in a long view.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a project. I'm sort of okay. So John Keats was a poet who nobody paid any attention to, got terrible reviews. Van Gogh never sold a painting.
Yeah.
There's a long view that happens with art, and Van Gogh was a painter. Never sold a painting, never had a show, but we know now that he was definitely a painter.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, it's really not important to get a festival or anybody's authorization to be an artist. I think actually one of I love film festivals. I think they do a lot of great goods. I think one of the things that they don't do sometimes very well is have that, a lot of the language that's used around filmmaking, like, okay, we rejected your film. Okay, or whatever. A lot of this kind of language, I think, is sort of discouraging to artists and is not useful for organizations that are supposed to be supporting and encouraging artists. So anyway, that's a long way of saying, once you've decided, you should just say it and own it.
Yeah. Now I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. Festivals, we know in the long run, or in the bigger scope of things, we know festivals are competition.
Mm-hmm.
The rejection part.
Yeah.
And I've gotten it plenty of times. That it's standard letter.
Right.
Hi, Mr. Mendez. Your film sucked. Not so many words, but you feel it. That you're like, at the end of it, you're like, fuck, I suck. And either you're going to bounce back from that, or you're going to be like, dude, that's number 50. Yes. You know what I mean? So there's two ways of seeing it, but at the end of the day, we know film festivals, or should know that film festivals are a competition.
Right.
At the same time, they're a form of, like you were saying, it's an outlet for filmmakers. And it should be used as an outlet for filmmakers, but it's still a competition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think of them as a competition in a way. Like what film festivals do is they exhibit work. So, so films are being curated and chosen and selected for presentation, but they're, to a specific audience, So festivals are curating work for their audience. And just because they decide to show one movie versus another movie doesn't necessarily mean that, like, as you sort of suggested a second ago, that your movie like sucks or stinks or you did a terrible job, or whatever. It honestly just may not be the right fit for that festival or not somebody's taste, And listen, the Bluetooth Virgin was rejected by, 5 festivals or 6 festivals. I don't even remember, where it premiered was not the first festival we submitted to. Yeah. And, then the movie comes out and it gets a review in the LA Times saying that, Billy Wilder would have loved this movie. And, like, it gets all these great reviews. So it's like, who knows? It's like one person's taste, not another person's taste. It's art is so subjective.
It
So
is.
I really think, getting a festival decline. I don't even like the word rejected. I just say that I always say they didn't program it.
Yeah. I love your take on this because I really do. And again, yeah, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm kind of picking on you a little bit. See, get
No,
some reaction on film festivals and whatnot. Because I've heard it on both ends. Because again, running my own film festival, I get so many letters like, "Well, why didn't you this?" And I've gotten a hate mail once, and it was like almost 3 pages long as to why I was so wrong not picking their film. And I was like, look, first of all, I appreciate you writing me the letter. I really do. I understand you because I am a filmmaker. But you also have to understand I run a small film festival with very limited screening time because the theater that we use, they give us 1 day and they work with us. So with all that said, I'm like, look, I have to be very picky about who we actually screen and who we get and whatnot because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I'm not saying your film was wrong. It just didn't fit that criteria. And then they're like, well, still, da da da. Da. I'm like, okay, you know, you can't win them all.
well, this is what the Bluetooth version's about. People get their whole all self-worth and their everything tied up in their work. And so they get this letter and they think you're attacking them personally.
Yeah, and again, that when we when we saw the film, we're like, dude, we're laughing about it because again, we have been at every situation that you posted. Like my favorite one was with the wife. They're going back and forth, different rooms. Because when I was writing my first film, I was so engulfed in it. I was like, dude, next masterpiece. I kept writing, and I put everything aside to the point where even when I was editing, I put my family aside. And
Yeah.
she was like, dude, what the hell is going on? It's just a movie. I'm like, no, it's not just a movie. It's my masterpiece. And she's like, it's just a movie. It's going to be
Right.
seen by your friends and it's going to go on Amazon. We already know the process that you're going to do. It's just a movie, guy. And I'm like, no, you just don't understand me. And I saw your film and I was like, asshole. I
I mean,
was like,
I have some personal opinions on what if I ran all the festivals in the world, how I would approach this topic of not letting in festivals or not choosing films. I would be very careful about the languaging. Like I would say, I wouldn't use, I hate those letters. I mean, I don't hate them, but I just find them like a little obnoxious. Like we received like 98,000 submissions. Well, it's like that doesn't really make me feel better. That because I know that I've put 5 years of my life in this.
yeah.
It doesn't make me feel better that there's like some sort of truck wheelbarrow out there with movies. It doesn't. I think that those sort of past letters could be a little bit. Some are better than others. That's all I'm saying. In my
There's no way. There is no way of telling somebody, I'm sorry, but whatever. You know
yeah
what I mean? It's like, well, you know what I mean? And I've been to somewhere it is a competition. And I'm
yeah
like, wow, dude, you're like really poking at filmmakers. But I'm like, and there's some, like you said, they're curated and they make you feel like everybody is at the same level, whether you're doing a $200,000 film or a $200 film.
yeah. I mean,
So, yeah.
doing that is if they can get that done that way, that's the best. If you can make everybody sort of feel like we're all doing the same kind of work.
You're all filmmakers, you're all directors, you're all that title is not really there, but it is there for a purpose or reason, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So I mean, I understand it. I've seen both sides of the coins. Again, I just wanted to see your take on it. And you said you're working on a couple more projects, right?
Well, I'm working on this film, Lauren and Rose, which has taken up many, many years of my life. And so it's just finishing up, which is good. Um, and with this whole kind of global shutdown, it's kind of made it a little. I don't know. It's an interesting headspace to be in about what to do next. I haven't really figured it out.
Now I got a question on that because I've seen it, and I'm before this happened, we were seeing a trend where the Netflixes, the Tubies, the video on demand, the apps were becoming the next gatekeepers. So what I mean by that is before it used to be the Paramounts, the whatever, and then the Kevin Smith came along, they broke that, and then now when Netflix got big, that was the next wave. Now, you know what I mean? So now we're seeing a lot of like the Disney Pluses straight from instead of video releases or theatrical releases, we're going on that. But they're saying they're going there.
Yeah.
How do you see, or what's your opinion on how you see this whole transformation of film?
I don't really know because it'll be interesting to see what happens with this movie. I've gone through everything. Like my first film was sort of the model where you get the large advance from the distributor. And then they did a little theatrical to get good reviews, and then they put it out in home video, and then TV, and then all of the streaming things were sort of like down the cycle. And then the Bluetooth version was like that too, actually. And then Annie and the Gypsy was this movie I made with Sybil Shepherd, which was like the last gasp of home video. Like they really wanted to make a TV and home video sale out of that. Then I made this movie called Search Engines, which was all about the streaming, and I mean, just as it goes along, the filmmaker's recoupment is sort of less and less and harder. That's what I've experienced.
Yeah.
So I don't know what will happen on this movie, though. This movie has some other kind of selling. It has a bigger star, and I think will probably be better reviewed than the last movie. So maybe it'll be different. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, because like I said, I mean, the model has changed a lot. It used to be before where you have 1 or 2 stars, you're good. They're going to pick you up. You know what I mean? Or you're going to get screened. And because you're going to get screened, you're going to get that contract, yada, yada. But now it's, I mean, I don't know. It's changed so much. And even then, like I said, Disney, instead of going to theaters, they're saying, okay, we're going to go straight to Disney Plus. They're changing their model. They're adapting. You know what I mean?
It does seem like a lot of these streaming services are generating their own content too, so they're not licensing stuff as much. So I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, obviously there's money to be made out there somehow because there's still a whole industry that supports the films being made and produced, and festivals as markets and all of this kind of stuff. But I just don't know what the numbers are like.
Now, as far as distribution goes, you have a different model than most of us, where your distributor paid you to make the film.
No, that's never happened.
No, well, maybe I misunderstood. Well, with your distributor, did you make the film first and then get the distributor, or okay? So it's still that same model where you make the movie, you get the distributor plays with it, and then you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Not really. Distributors are generally very crooked and very difficult. I've not had, on my last film, I had a terrible experience with the distributor. So distributors are, some of them are really bad.
Yeah, because with our first film, they changed the trailer, they changed the artwork. I'm like, dude, there was no explosions in our film. What the? I'm okay, whatever. I can't do anything now. It's gone for another 4 years or something like that. Or I don't know. But it's out there.
They're pretty. A lot of them are pretty creepy.
Yeah, it's somewhere in Indonesia or some on getting bootlegged somewhere. But anyways, yeah, as far as distributor, how did you go about getting your distributor and working with them? And has it been different for each film, or?
Well, it's always been the movie will premiere at a festival, and then we'll use that the reviews or the sort of outcome from the festival to introduce the film to distributors, and then you'll get some offers and some different things, and you sort of sift through them and see who's kind of seems like the best one. But I'd say I've had mediocre experience with distributors up until the last one, which was a terrible experience with a distributor. I can't say I've ever had a great experience with a distributor. Race You to the Bottom, my first film, was probably the best experience with a distributor. I think I started off well and went downhill.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So would you say keep going that way, or would you change your model and say, you know what, forget this, I'm going to go straight self-distributing?
Well, the one thing that I've really changed is actually my relationship to festivals. I used to go have this attitude or tactic where I would sort of play the premiere and then I would try and sell the movie, and then whatever festival run happened. This is exactly what happened with the Bluetooth version. So the Bluetooth version premiered at the Seattle Film Festival. It won the jury prize, and a distributor picked it up out of Seattle, and I didn't really pursue any more festival play with it because I was kind of like, well, they're doing a theatrical release, then it'll come out on DVD. Like, I don't really need or want to do this festival circuit anymore. And also they have the rights now. I'll just let it. They took all the rights. So my festival run is over. My attitude now is I want to just play. I want to play the movie as many festival. And then I lost the rights for 10 years, which is why I started sending it to festivals again. Like when the rights came back to me, I started submitting it again and just showing it places,
Yeah.
And actually festivals like yours have actually been pretty receptive to showing an old title because there's no other way to see the movie.
Yeah.
So it's my viewpoint really has been the joy of making these films, and the real pleasure comes from the festival run, and from, all of the, and interacting with people who've seen it, interacting with you, seeing people who've seen your work and appreciate it. Like that's the prize now for me versus getting a distributor report that says your movie's been seen in the month of March, it's been seen, 1,600 times. It's like, I just don't care about that anymore. What I care about is how the work that I did is impacting people, affecting them, whether they like it or not, them experiencing it. That's what it's about for me.
That's awesome, because I was talking to Scott Dunn in our previous interview, and I talked to him about the fact that when he screened it, I think it was the San Francisco Comic-Con, and I'm like, okay, how did you feel when the lights turned on, you turned around and you're like, wow, there's like 200 plus people there to see your stuff, and they all applaud you and they're like questions and interacting with that. And he's like, man, dude, there's a feeling to that. There's a feeling of going to a theater, physically being there, like you're saying, interacting with your audience, just having that reception.
Yeah.
And I think most of us as filmmakers, that's what we love. That's the meat and potatoes for it all.
Yeah.
To see somebody's face and talk about your film, really talk about your film and be like, I like this part because da-da-da-da. Oh man, I like this part because one part that we had a grandma. There was a lady who played a grandma, and one of the audience members came up to her, hugged her real hard, and said, "You know what? You remind me of my grandma." And she started crying. I was like, "Oh wow!" It was my first film, not the best, but there was an interaction between an audience member and the cast member, and it was beautiful. And I was like, dude, that's what I live for. Yeah. I love it. Even though I know it's a rinky-dink film, I know it was my first film. I made a lot of mistakes, but there was still that interaction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything such thing as a rinky-dink film, by the way.
Well, I
This-
call it a rinky-dink film because I know I've grown from that. You know what I mean? And that's one of the things that me personally, I have to just say, this was my starting point, and
yeah.
I've grown from there. And just I didn't know what I was doing. I had zero budget. It was friends and family. It just every mistake you can make, I made it. But I
Yeah.
love it. That's one of my. I love that film. I mean,
See, that's
I
that,
try
that's what you have to say. You're gonna say like I made this film and I love it. I made some mistakes, but God, do I love it? I think that's the best attitude.
I do. I try to get everybody to watch it. I'm like, dude, you should watch my film. It's funny, it's quirky, it's cheesy, but you gotta watch it. But anyway, man, I don't know. Going back to again your film before we close out the Bluetooth version.
Yeah.
I know you could watch it on Amazon.
Yeah, that's actually not supposed to be happening. I keep trying to get that off there.
And I was going to promote it because I want people to see it.
No. I know. To be honest with you, if your listeners want to see the movie, they can write me, and I will send them a link, and they can watch it for free. I'm happy if because I'm happy to save people the $5, which isn't even going to me anyway. And I will send you a link, and you can watch it for free. So just email me. The one thing I ask is that you write me 2 sentences after you've watched it and tell me what you think, good or bad.
All right, cool. So we'll do that. We'll put it out there. If any of our audience wants to watch it, they could. I'll put the link down there. We'll use your website. That way they can go to your website and contact you via your website.
Sure.
But it is the Bluetooth version. I'll probably even do a review on it and put it up probably this week or next week
I'd love
on
that.
our channel. Because I do. I really love the movie, and that was the reason why it got picked as the best overall film, because it was different. I'm a big horror genre, B movie, sci-fi kind of guy.
Yeah.
But when I watched this, I was like, I really love the nuance of making fun of who we are and kind of picking on ourselves and just going through those ideas, that step, like you were saying, the process of how to deal with each other when it's not so favorable, I guess.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, dude, I want to keep that relationship because it's important.
Yeah.
But then I also want to be honest to you because, that's what I should be doing as a friend.
See, I mean, this conversation is exactly why I make films. Like having that kind of somebody say that to me, it means that I really communicated what I was hoping to communicate. And that makes the whole thing worthwhile. That's why artists do what they do. So thank you. I'm very genuine when I say that. I mean, it's really why everyone knows the pain and torture that this goes on to make these things. And it's worth it when you connect with people.
No, man, thank you for submitting your film. Otherwise, we would have never seen it. It was honestly, it was our privilege as a festival to receive the submission. And I honestly say that because we can't be festivals without the submission and the hard work of filmmakers like yourself.
Yeah.
And even though we are a smaller, lower tier festival, we want to say that we've gotten quality and many quality films to where you're like, man, it's hard selecting 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Because it is. But at the end of the day, little things that stand out to you, little ideas, at the end of the day, I had a payoff of the film. And I think that's one of the things that I got on my short story guys. And I'm like, dude, give me a payoff. Don't give me cliffhangers. Your short story, give me a payoff.
Yeah.
But in feature film, when you have that transition and that completeness.
That completeness.
Yeah. And you're like, wow, okay. Yeah, that was badass. And you sit there and you're like, oh, it's a documentary. I wasn't bored. It's a drama. I felt it. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. You start writing it. You contact the director. And I mean, that's what I look for. And again, I I can't keep saying enough good things about your film.
Oh,
And
thanks.
again, that's why we connected with you to try to get, a little just one-on-one with you, man, and see where the film came from.
Well, I'm glad I was able to make it happen. Talk to you.
Again, it's our pleasure, man, to have you on the show and to be able to connect with you and talk to you, and again see where the film comes from, the mind of, Russell, and be like, okay, cool. Now we understand. Great guy, great film, two and two together. So awesome. We do thank you for coming in and taking the time to be here on the show. And I know we couldn't talk because of everything that's going on with the whole distancing, but I think it's because of that we're allowed to do this, and that kind of the positive flip side.
No, I know they're really, it does, all these little silver linings are coming out in a weird way about what's going on. So we'll see how it all shakes out, I guess.
Awesome. And again, I do appreciate you being on the show, and thank you very much. And maybe we could have you back once your next film comes out.
Sure.
Talk about that.
That'd be great. Thanks, David.
Awesome, man. Thank you, brother.
All right. Have a great day. Talk to you later. Take care of yourself. See ya. Bye.